Selectmen's, but I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen's budget workshop for, this is Tuesday, Wednesday, January 19th, to order this order. This meeting is being held in a hybrid fashion as allowed by executive order and state statutes. So with that, want to welcome our colleagues from the Board of Finance. I see at this point we have both Chairman Mike Ailes and Member Jeff Beatty. Welcome to our world today, Phil. And please feel free to ask questions at any point. Just raise your hand either physically or with the raise hand button if you've got a specific question. Same all the way around. So with that, I just want to confirm that everybody has access to the electronic materials. Are we in good shape with that? Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about me.
Okay.
Why don't you get on board package?
I'm on board.
That's really all you need.
Okay.
Right, and so we're gonna utilize Board Pack as the primary vehicle to review. Everyone will have an opportunity to play with the ClearGov app and to forge your way around that, assuming you've created your own account with your email and password. So with that, first up on our agenda is the assessor's office. And we've got Jen and I think Barb's waiting for the Board of Assessment Appeals, but Jen?
Yes, can you hear me?
Or yes, we can.
Okay. To start with, we'll start with the full-time salaries, and there's an increase of $5,278, which is contractual. I have a decrease in my salaries for the part-timer just for this year because of the fact that we're going through a revaluation. So the revaluation company will be doing the part-time work. Under printing and scanning, I have a $120 increase. Reason for that is there's an increase in the fees. The clothing allowance, there's no change, that's contractual. There's no change in my copier line. Under office supplies, again, there's an increase in fees. I increased it $810 due to that. I have a decrease of $50 in dues and memberships. There is an association that has not been meeting and seems to be a little defunct right now. Under education and training, I've also decreased it by $1,550 due to not going to those meetings. So there's a deduction in the meeting and mileage. And then that leaves an overall increase in my budget of just over $2,100.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen. I had one quick question. Office supplies, is that just general office supply, inflationary pressure on materials and supplies that we're seeing in a lot of areas?
No, basically it has to do with our pricing guides. It used to be called the NADA pricing guides for motor vehicles. It's now JD Power, and they're having a large increase.
Okay. Got it. Anybody else have any questions? Before Jen leaves, we've seen some preliminary numbers on grand list growth, and there is significant reason for optimism. So Jen, thanks for sharing those earlier. Then you're statutorily required to give us, which is what, I think January 31st, but
February 1st.
or February 1st, January 31st. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody have any questions of Jen? No, hearing none. Jen, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Barbara.
Good morning,
morning.
everyone.
Good morning. Board of Assessment Appeal.
Yes, there's only a overall $825 increase in the budget. $700 due to adding possible sixth member to the Board of Assessment Appeals. and a little increase in advertising since the Shore Publishing has been going up every year on their fees. And then for education and training, I did bump that up in case of another member attending the board, and also for a refresher for those who wish to take a refresher or to update on any new laws. I am looking ahead to the revaluation appeal hearings. The last time we had a significant increase in real estate values, the first year, we had over 980 appeals that had to be heard, and we had to split the board. So there is a potential that we would need that sixth person.
Okay. Any questions?
Matt,
Go ahead. Mike,
sorry, I just want to ask, how is that, how would that by process occur, adding a sixth member to the assessment appeals?
the Board of Select would appoint an individual.
It's an appointment, okay. So I figured. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. All right, hearing none. Barbara, thank you very much.
You're welcome, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a great day. All right, next up on my list is communications. Is that correct?
I have library
Library,
on the agenda.
okay. Go back.
Hi, good morning.
We're gonna skip right over you, Rob.
All right, go ahead.
So the biggest driver of the increase, I'm sorry, was everyone ready?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Obviously, the contractual increases in the salaries is the biggest single item. Just as anecdotal, I would point out that before this increase, our salary level for the current year, prior to the 2 rounds of negotiation, prior to the 2 years with the increase, we were about where we were 10 years ago. So it's not like the library is, the salaries have been pretty steady and flat. And I just wanted to thank the GEA and the negotiation process for this increase, because our salaries were competitively very low relative to other libraries in the area and the state. The Connecticut Library Association just did a benchmark study, and after this increase, we are now at the 30th percentile for an entry-level librarian, which is not great, but it's certainly better than it was. And then with the remaining increase, I think will improve a little more. So that's it's very relieving to be a little more competitive statewide. So moving on to the operating budget, there is an increase largely for reasons beyond my control of $4,944. The biggest single factor in this is a $3,000 increase in the utilities line. And I just have to say, with utilities over the last few years, it's become a little bit of a guessing game. And I think last year I just guessed a little low in my zeal to cut. Now, just to give some perspective, I know I've mentioned this before, there was the Johnson & Controls contract, which upgraded energy efficiency throughout the town. We were a very successful example of this. So prior to that, prior to that thing, so looking at say 18-19, that budget request was $111,000 in utilities line. This year I'm asking for $35,700 less than that for a figure of where am I? 75. Sorry, I'm home today, and I have a sore throat and some symptoms this morning, so I'm staying home. And I've managed to not work from home this entire time, but today I am. So a little.
He's a newbie.
So we're requesting $75,300, which is still way under our traditional ask, thanks to all the improvements. The reason for this, we managed to do good through the last fiscal year, and then somehow the last few months, we've seen an increase. And again, it was a guessing game because of all the improvements. Then it became a guessing game because of COVID, because we were obviously down a little bit because we closed temporarily. Then we had different hours. Then we were opening up all the windows to make it safer for the staff and the public. So it's really hard to kind of get a real good estimate going forward. I'm being a little cautious by this $3,000 increase. I think it's a safe bet. We might be a little shy, but fortunately, thanks to the library, the Guilford Library Association and the Friends of the Library, we can always manage to make up the difference. That's the single biggest increase, making up that 4,900. The remaining ones just have to do with the various contracts to keep the library afloat, with like the elevator service, fire sprinkler inspection, and so on. There was a modest increase in those, but the single biggest one out of those was a $1,400 increase with Libraries Online fees. Now, this is the first time Libraries Online, which is our consortium of 28 member libraries, has increased their fees in about 4 years. And I know I've done it in the past, but I just want to quickly just kind of give a little background on Lion. That has enabled us to keep our level of service up as high as it is without any problem given to the suffering of the state libraries delivery service. So Libraries Online invested in their own delivery service. And at the time we used reserve funds in that organization to pay for that. Now, finally, it's caught up with us a little bit. We need to go ahead and increase the fees for the members to keep that level of service where it is. And just to put it in some perspective, we get 1 delivery a week from the state library. We get with about 2 small bins of books with about 30 bins. We get about a dozen bins a day from Libraries Online. So the service to the public that we are able to continue to offer is all thanks to Libraries Online. So those are the biggest drivers. Everything else, and again, I thank you for the modest increase in books, which brought us up to $5,000, which is still only a tiny fraction of what we actually spend. But given that we're in a position now where the digital demand is twice what it was before the pandemic, it's about 25–26% of our circulation now. It was about 12 or 13 prior to the pandemic. But the demand for books has not gone away. So we're kind of doing this double duty with a lot of items. So thank you for that. But those are most of the major highlights for this year's.
Thank you very much for highlighting the utilities line item and the difference over the past 4 years. I know there are members of the Board of Finance as well as the Board of Selectmen who have been curious to see in definitive terms, but this is a clear example of the value of the energy performance contract, as you are some $30,000 less in utility expenses than we were 4 years ago. So thank you for highlighting that.
I would just say, the first year of the improvements, we did return $27,000 to the town, and then we returned an additional, I believe it was $8,000 after that. So if I'm wrong and my estimates are a little under, we'll simply return the money.
Matt, I do have a semi question or a comment. Rob, great job at the library during the pandemic. One of your comments did perk my interest, and that was on the salary line item. You had said that with the latest go around, we're at approximately 30% benchmark statewide. Does the Library Association do anything benchmarking with peers? I mean, because if you start going statewide and include, some of the cities and that type of thing, it might skew it. I was wondering if they do a peer review, because 30% is not the best.
I have done, informally, I look at all our neighboring libraries. I guess my point is there's room for optimism. It's gotten much better. We did have a situation earlier in my career, I've been here for about 15 years, where we did have a little bit of a problem with staff retention. We lost 3 team librarians in a row, 2 went to Madison and 1 went to Middletown. I was able to do some rearranging, in conjunction with the board. As soon as I took over as director, there was an opportunity due to some savings in the salary line to do a little bit of rearranging. I used that opportunity to improve some of the professional salary lines, but I couldn't do much about the entry level. So to the extent I was able to, and then just this last year, I was also able to do a couple of tweakings of the professional salaries to boost up some of our long-term professionals, to make them a little more competitive.
No, I understand that, and I'm aware, and I remember, you know, some of the how you manage that, or how the library manage that, and I do appreciate that. My question is,
Right.
it,
I don't have exact figures on that. My hunch, just based on the informal studies I have done, is it's actually a little bit worse when you compare us to
you think we would be worse against our peers?
when I do comparable, like based on sort of similar population and wealth towns, such as Madison, such as, I don't know,
Okay.
Wallingford.
That answers my question. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but I don't have exact figures on that.
Sandy's had some experience here. Clearly, Charles, I think you bring up a good point. If we were to compare ourselves to what do they call it on the education side, the DERG group? Which tends to lump us in with several of the Fairfield County communities based on wealth profile. I bet that number is not quite 30. I bet it would probably fall.
Even if you don't worry about the Fairfield County libraries, because that is a more unique county, I support what Rob is saying, that the entry level looks better than it did, but I'm sure he's correct in the 30%, and even with libraries around here. So it's nothing that we can do at this moment, but it's just good for us to know. And it is hard. People like to work at the library, but the salary is the bottom line at times, and that's going to be the driver.
And Mitch, you just want to comment a little bit. This is the agreement with GEA addressed specific pockets of like this, where we were woefully underpaying folks. And we implemented something over a couple of year windows. You want to talk just briefly there?
Sure, the GA contract, we did, as Rob mentioned, look mostly at the entry-level salaries. We've made some adjustments, as you can see, if you look at your salary sheets. You know, the entry level went up by about 5.5% last year, and then 3% next year. They'll go up by 3% each year. We've moved those entry levels up, you know, each year as we move along this contract. And yeah, I think we're much more competitive. Are we competitive where we should be? Maybe not yet, but we're working with unions, we're working with our budgets, and how much we feel we can, you know, put in. And there was several areas, library being one, we need to make some major adjustments. I think you'll see that as you go through the salaries of this budget cycle.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Rob? No, hearing none. Rob, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, next up, Human Services. I think I see Pam Elman, or I did see Pam Elman on the line at one point.
I'm here.
Good morning, Pam.
Good morning, everybody.
How are you today?
Doing well. How is everybody there?
Great, thank you.
Good. All right. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump right into it. As you can see by the materials we submitted, we received 16 applications for funding this year. The total amount requested by the organizations was $133,805. We are recommending funding for 15 of the organizations, and the amount we're recommending is $108,691. This is a 8.48% increase over last year. We're not recommending funding for one applicant. That's an organization that was new to us called UR Community Cares. Because as of right now, we felt it did not have enough structure in place and had not demonstrated services to Guilford residents. The increase in our funding request is because COVID has placed an enormous demand on many of the organizations. If you compare the number of Guilford residents served this year to the prior year, many of the organizations show an increase. And here I have a few examples for you. The VNA has a 3.7% increase, Clifford Beers 18%, Food Bank 10%, Meals on Wheels 7%, Orchard House 10%, Women and Family Life 12% for the Guided Assistance Program, Guilford Before and After Care 25%, and Guilford Center for Children 9%. One of the biggest issues for many of the organizations was the ability to hire and train staff. Many employees changed jobs, left the workforce, or left for higher pay. With respect to CARES Act funding, most of the applicants, but not all, applied for and received funding. Some did not for various reasons. That's my summary in a nutshell. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I will get the information and email you.
Thank you, Pam. Questions? Pam, I just, against the backdrop of the pandemic and rescue relief funds, there may be an opportunity for us, and I know there's going to be an opportunity for many of the folks that are listed on your roster to take advantage of an application process which is yet to be completed or determined. So there will be an opportunity for many of these organizations to apply for funding directly to the town of Guilford. The Treasury Department just issued the final rule about 10 days ago, 8 to 10 days ago. Mary Jane and I have been working through that. The committee that is yet to be formed, but I have, I think, 9 volunteers who are going to be working on establishing program criteria and award criteria. So many of your in the group that you mentioned have been dramatically impacted by the pandemic in terms of increased service levels and pressure on their budgets and the inability to raise the kind of funds they have in the past. So just regardless of what we do with this, there will be additional opportunities for these organizations to come to the table. So any specific questions from board members on what Pam has presented, or?
I have.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Matt, if I could jump in.
Okay, look, go ahead.
So on, for instance, Clifford Beers, I feel like that number has been up and down for various reasons over the years, and it's up 50% to still a modest number. I mean, $6,000. I'm curious, how many people are served at that figure? And are those folks, are the services that are being provided by Clifford Beers typically services that would be covered by insurance? Say, for instance, if these people were on Husky, and if that is the case, there's somebody sort of guiding them to the extent that that opportunity presents itself to figure out a way to get themselves on the state health insurance that's otherwise available?
Okay, what you asked me 2 questions. The first one was the number.
Great,
of people.
probably, but
Great. Can we take them in order? What was the first one?
so how many people are served at that $6,000 by the Clifford Beers request?
Okay, the clinic provided, let's see, mental health services to 80 children and their families in Guilford this year. That's the 18% increase over last year. So 80 children and their families.
Okay, and so then typically would those services be something that would be covered by insurance and specifically Husky?
Some, yes, the services are covered. The issue is not every, well, some services are covered, some aren't. Yes, so they can get reimbursement for most of the services, not all. Sometimes the case management services are not covered. And some of their recipients are Husky, do have Husky. Some have no insurance at all. And for those, I think they provide a sliding scale type of structure, fee structure.
So and that really, so that I'm sorry, I don't want to make a huge thing out of this, but it seems to me the number one service we could be providing to people is to helping them figure out a way to get themselves insured. In this state and in this town, it's hard for me to imagine that too many people would continue to be uninsured with the opportunities that are available to them to get on that program. I just don't get that.
You do have to remember that if your status is in question, you are not able to get on insurance. So I know they do serve immigrant populations as well.
Right.
Okay.
So Lou, if you'd like me to follow up with that, I can definitely get some more information for you if you'd like.
I just want to kind of understand, and Megan, thanks for that depressing piece of additional information. And I guess we need to know that. I just kind of want to make sure that whenever there's that little push that's available to be made saying, if somebody's available for this coverage.
Sure, I will definitely
So
I'll get it.
that would be
Yeah.
a great service that we could provide.
And
Sure.
I know
Okay.
Pam, I mean, Pam and I probably know this better, but I know the other issue is not just the health coverage, but like you can't get appointments. So there is a backlog for organizations like Clifford Beards and other mental health providers. So it is difficult to get appointments, especially for children.
All right. So it sounds like a good apt
What-
spending of our money.
But what I think is important to understand here, Lou, even if every patient walked through Clifford Beer's doors with Husky coverage, it wouldn't, the payments do not cover the cost of service delivery for the professionals that are doing it. It's a widely known fact that Medicare, Medicaid and Husky stuff do not pay anything close to the true cost of service delivery. So these are subsequent fundraising efforts that they go to try to fill the gap.
Got it. I'm not objecting to the payment. I just wanted to understand back,
Yeah.
the back channel here a little bit, but I got it.
As I understand it, you're really more concerned as to why there may be a gap in any coverage at all. That's your concern, right?
At the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
If we
So
could
that's
help people with that, that'd be a big help.
right. So that's your specific question. Okay,
Right.
I'll see what I can find out and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Uh,
To
and
Lou's
Lou-
point,
Go ahead, Carl. Go ahead,
to
Charles.
Lou's point, I think where Lou is trying to come from is that, and I think we're probably doing it in different areas, youth and family and other places, to find a path, or I guess even social services department, to find a path to make sure that anybody that can be insured in whatever program is insured. I mean, I have the same question with BNA. I mean, that they serve a lot of people, but a lot of that has got to be covered by insurance. And, that is a difficult, it's difficult to maneuver insurance payments and that type of thing. I mean, there are industries around payment structures of insurance companies. And I think that's a service that, we ought to make sure is being covered so that people that can take advantage of different situations are able to. So I think that's the point you were trying to make, Lou, is if that gap exists, how can we help people fill that gap?
Right. And
Charles, thank you for bringing that point up. I was going to immediately go to that. When we have an opportunity to talk about this very question with not Sandy, but Tammy in
Right.
social services, she'll tell you the number of people that we have been able to get on the various programs. So clearly, many Guilford residents are getting that same kind of advice and that same kind of guidance as to how to take advantage of the various state programs. Pam, I think you had another comment. And then Sandy has a question. Sandy?
Hi, Pam.
Hi, Sandy.
Shoreline Village has not been on before, is that correct?
That's correct. This was their first time applying for funds.
And because of my own technological issues, I haven't been able to get to the background of Shoreline Village. So I believe it's a not-for-profit organization for people of a certain age to stay in their homes and help each other, and they pay dues to be part of it. And it's more than just Guilford. And I feel with the fighting for the funds on these worthy organizations here, do we need to give $1,000 to Shoreline Village?
The answer to your question is, well, let me explain to you what the money is that they requested is for. The request is made specifically to support the part-time services of a registered nurse. So we felt that was beneficial. We felt that was valuable. We felt that would be something that would assist people in staying in their homes.
And did they share statistics with how many Guilford residents are part of that organization?
Yes. This is currently 13 Guilford residents receive services through the organization, which range from transportation to medical and other appointments, geriatric, RN home assessments, recommendations and referrals to VNA, occupational therapy, physical therapy, access to assistance with grocery shopping, vetted home services such as electricians or plumbers. There are 32 volunteers at present who provide the driving, shopping, repairs, And let's see, active membership is provided at a cost to members, but adjusted rates are available in situations of financial hardship. So this money isn't to assist in providing membership, it's to provide the services of a part-time registered nurse.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jane, you had something?
Well, I just wanted to say for the benefit of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, all of this backup Pam did provide. It is on ClearGov, but I will email her document to all of you so you specifically have it, but we just don't have, I can bring it up on the screen, but it's probably not worth sharing and going through all of it. It's a quite comprehensive document, and I think that might help you answer some of your questions.
Right, if you have specific questions about the number of Guilford residents served, that is detailed in this document. Every single organization that we recommend funding for, we do a summary of each organization, what they do, how many Guilford residents they've served, what percentage change versus last year, and how the money that they're requesting, that we're recommending, will specifically be used only just for Guilford residents. It's all in this document.
Is
Thank
everybody
you.
else able to see anything?
I can't get online somehow on this, so I can't even.
Yeah, like I said, I could bring it up on the screen. I'm not sure if we want to go through all of it today, but we can certainly do that.
I'd rather just know how I can get to it, but if I'm the only one that has the problem. we can
I
do it
don't
one
have
on one.
it. No, Pam, you always do a great job with
Yeah.
all that. It was just that because Shoreline Village was new, I just thought I would ask.
Yeah, no, I understand. We put all the information in there. We also have information about the organization that we decided not to fund. So if you had questions about that, all that information is in there as well.
Okay.
Anything further?
Did Lifelinks fail to apply this year again?
Correct. They have not applied actually the past 2 years.
Okay,
Pam,
so it's not a
you look at-
mistake then.
You look
Which
at all the
I'm s-
990s and you look at how much money goes to the bottom line and how much is absorbed with overhead and pay and all that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
You get them to submit their 990 returns?
Yes, they submit all their financial documents. The one member of our organization takes care of that, Terry Brigantino. All of the applicants are required to submit tax returns, the document you just mentioned, and proof of their 501c3 status. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Thanks,
Charles, you had a question. I didn't hear something about Lifelinks.
No, it just, in previous years, we thought maybe it was a mistake or,
No, they've
whatever,
not,
but obviously that's conscious at this point.
right, they have not reapplied.
Okay, anything further for Pam?
The Board of Selectmen already has an email with the document.
Thank you very much. Pam, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, Parks and Recreation. Rick and Rose.
Hi, guys.
Rose came, so she helped me paint a rosy picture of the budget.
Oh. There we go.
I'm on the town.
I'm actually, if we just for a quick moment here, a technical, connection. I've got ClearGov up, but again, this is my own inability to figure
Well,
it
that's
out.
why I don't have the ability to bring it up on the screen if some people wanted to see it, but I've just emailed you that document, so.
Can you just direct us where to go, the path, where to go, like where the clear go, like here, click there, how to get the documents? 'Cause I know that for the Park and Rec materials, I'm sure there's, like usual, it would be great to be able to refer to that. And I don't think I'm doing it.
What is the, I can't get onto the Wi-Fi, even though I'm on the Wi-Fi here. It says, I need a password to get on the town Wi-Fi.
You do, it's good. It's listed right outside.
You got all this.
Yeah, it's just on whatever you guys, so. you can explain it. And then everywhere.
Wi-Fi.
Everywhere there's a green paper clip. there's
Green
a
paper
document.
clip, thank you, perfect.
Skill first capital G with exclamation point.
All the way to the right, see that paper clip. And so if this stuff is in your way, you can close those so you don't see those. if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
And like I said,
Okay.
I can share my screen and put anything up on the screen from there, people can see as well.
All right, thank you for the, indulging us on our technological challenge. Rick and Rose, floor is yours.
All right, well, as all departments, the pandemic continued to vex all of us, and it affected everything we do. But we saw that people were hungry to come back, with the concerts we had and the beach attendance was, way up this year. Concerts in the green, concerts at the beach, our programs, all of our summer camps were either full or close to full, that, including sports camps. So we were kind of back to normalcy. People were aching to come back, I would say. And our senior lunches are not where they were, but they're coming back up. There are certain parts of our budget, there are some big increases, so I think, I'll go over those first, if you think that's okay, Matt, and then, if you have any questions on those or anything else. Utilities, the increase there is about $29,000, was driven by a couple things. The 50 driveway, which is gonna be the new Parks and Rec and facilities, offices and building. We now have to pay for utilities there. That's oil, electricity, and water. So that's added about 19,000. The water for the field at Cox, the lower field that we're going to be renovating June, July, we added irrigation in there for about 4,000. And the other large part of that increase is Jacobs Beach water for the splash pad. We certainly talked about that. And we still.
Screen as well.
We still pay about $26,500 for utilities for the weight room at the high school. That's still in there. So that's the big increase for utilities.
Why do you say we are still paying it? Are you expecting that will change or something?
Is that a question for me? So we're still covering that building because the high school audit is not complete through the state. We are underway. The auditor has been here, received all the documentation and has everything for that. We're just waiting for that to be finalized. That grant needs to be closed out and final before we can switch back to building.
Building maintenance is minor increase there. Supplies have gone up everywhere. Grounds maintenance is a decrease. And that's because going forward, well, after next December, we no longer have to pay the lease on that the trailer there, the office trailer. So we reduced the budget. We kept it for 6 months because the lease is up through up next December. So we still have to pay the lease up through that period of time. But we did cut back on we have to rent a water tank for it, and the septic pumping and all that. So all that would be coming out. So going forward, we'll be able to cut our budget following year by $13,000 for that expense. We won't be having that anymore. So that's that account we've dropped down a bit. Field maintenance, that's gone up. And that is because increased cost of field marking paint, which is up by about 2,600. Grass seeds up by about 3,000. Fertilizers, 5,500. And soil amendments, which is like lime, silical. It's things that Tony puts into the ground that help improve the soil quality so that the fertilizer works better. Basically, improves the biology of the soils. Our field quality since Tony started this program has improved greatly. I'll just give you one example. The organizer of the over 50 men's soccer league, they had a game the Sunday after Thanksgiving, so we don't even usually let them on the fields that late. But they played on League 3. He sent me a picture, which I think shared with the commissioner. And some comments. He said that he and the opposing team said that they've never played on such a good field. And especially that late in the season, they're usually not in very good shape. A lot of it is attributed to what we're doing with those fields to improve the maintenance of them. But he sent a picture. It looked pristine. It looked like May. It was November 28th or something. It looked beautiful. And again, that's because of what we've been doing to improve the turf maintenance projects. Senior meals is the other big increase. That's up by about 33,000. We're currently at 27. We're asking for 60. The cost of food, if you go shopping, you know how food's gone up, supplies. I think I looked at with Larry at some of the bills. The gloves they use in the kitchen, that alone has gone up 142%, just for gloves. And then a typical meal, cod, for example, is about $1 more than what it was, just for the cod, not counting the vegetables and whatever else. So, and we're anticipating about 40,000 meals next year. I think we're gonna reach that this year too, between Meals on Wheels and the seniors who come to the community center. About 80 to 85% of what we do is actually Meals on Wheels, and the rest are in the community center. We're seeing the numbers come back some. The Rotary lunch, there were 180 seniors came for that free lunch the Rotary puts on. We've had as many as 135, 150 for some other special lunches we've done. Rose, you serve that on Matt, you serve that some. You see the numbers are there. They're coming back. They're not, those are special lunches. The typical week daily lunches are not where they used to be, but they're getting there. They're starting to come back. But the other thing I really need to point out is that the breakfast that we've served, anybody can come for breakfast. So when kids were in gymnastics, sometimes the parents would have a bagel and a coffee or some while the kids are in gymnastics. And the breakfast is not subsidized. That's 100% covered by, actually, we make some money on it. And so in the past, breakfast would help subsidize the lunch by about $18,000 to $20,000. We're not seeing that right now. So that's part of the deficit, if you want to call it that. We're not getting that revenue right now. We're getting some, it's coming back some, but not there yet. And hopefully another year or so when we're normal. 2 years ago, we wouldn't think we'd still be talking about this, but I think, we'll see it start to come back, I hope.
Right, if I could just make a quick comment. It's now a couple months ago that we sat down over at Park and Rec, Rose, Rick, myself, Terry, and Gilpin Interfaith volunteers to talk about this. One of the things that we did talk about was raising the fee on meals, because it's been relatively flat for quite some time. And it was my hope to avoid having to do that, particularly during these times. So there was actually some discussion about using COVID relief funds to at least get us through the next year or two. So this is an item where we might be able to utilize American Rescue Plan funds.
I've already made that note.
Yeah. So, and again, it was clear to me that this is not the right time for us to be raising the cost of meals to some of our most vulnerable residents. So, just want to.
Well, thanks, Matt, for that. But even in this request, we did talk about going up 50 cents. We did put that in as a possibility to try to keep down a little bit of what we're asking for. But this $60,000 include going up 50 cents in a meal. So if we're not going to do that, we might have to look a little bit more. We can refigure that if you want to do that. But you all know that the meal is only one part of it. It's the socialization. And, even when we were doing drive-through for a while, we were getting 80 to 100 people driving through. And someone would sit in a parking lot and tailgate. And, sit in the back of your car, or whatever, and eat their lunch because at least they saw somebody. And staff would be out there, we'd wave to them, we'd talk to them while they're driving by or go up to their window and say hello. But they missed it. And so the socialization is as important as the meal is. It really is. It's important. Unfortunately, we've been doing pretty well with that. So those are the biggest highlights. And the bottom line here is that if it were for that increase in utilities at 50 driveway, and the meal costs went up there, our increase would be 3.6%. We're at about 7% because of those. And those are the bigger drivers. I guess in the fields going up like 15,000, but it's supply costs. We don't really have any control over that. But even with that, if we took out that 33,000 for the meals, if we didn't have the utility increase on those areas I mentioned, we'd be at about 3.6%. And you all know, we like to come in with as low a budget as we can. We try to manage that as much as we can. We're not usually asking for big numbers. But those are the biggest drivers right Most of the other counts are either no increase or very low increase, I can go over anything you want to, but those are the biggest highlights I thought we should address, that are the biggest drivers.
Rick, I hate to see that 50 cents increase. How much actual dollars does that, would that be if you did it?
About 20,000.
Really?
So 40,000 meals.
So we're looking at more like a $53,000 increase.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, that's right. And how do we know this? The first quarter, Jerry Buckley does a great job of looking monthly at where we are with expenses, revenue and everything. Our first quarter, over and above the 6,500, I think roughly is what we have quarterly, from the subsidy. Over and above that, we're about $13,000 over right now. So we go 4 quarters, $52,000 over. If we stay in the same pattern, but that's, I don't know why it would change, if anything, maybe worse, but.
I was gonna say, make it larger.
But, I also gotta tell you that sometimes Larry can't even get the food. He's driven to West Haven and Wallingford to pick food up. Because some places wouldn't even deliver for a period of time. They didn't have drivers. He's driven to go get it. And, it's like anything else. You go to the grocery store and sometimes shelves are low. Stuff.
Other questions for Rick? Anybody remotely have any questions on what you just heard? No?
Yeah, Matt, one quick one. Rick, on the vehicle maintenance, I know you touched on that briefly, but is that actual, is that what happened this year? Are you projecting? And don't you have some newer vehicles? Like what? I'm always perplexed when we seem to get new vehicles and then the maintenance goes up as well.
Yes. But we still have older vehicles too. And our buses, some of our buses are now 10, 12 years old. And I mean, it's not, one of the buses recently was over $5,000 to make repairs on it. Another one was going to be more than that. We decided to sideline it. We just said, look, it's not worth it. It wasn't worth putting the amount of money into it. It was like, 10 years old, 12 years old, that bus had a lot of miles on it. And so we're not even putting it back in service. But last year, our actual was about 35,000. But we're thinking, we're projecting 50,000, but we have $10,000 out of a $44,000 grant we get for transportation grant. 10,000 of that we apply toward the vehicle maintenance. So that drops it down to 40,000 instead of 50. So we use that grant. Other parts of that grant go toward fuel for the buses. Another one goes toward drivers. I think about 21,000 applies to drivers. And I think 11,000 roughly goes towards salaries for Patty. She's basically Terry's assistant.
So I think what you're saying here is your budget is more like $2,100,000 or something, because there's so much that's offset through grant funding, right?
Right. And we know we have those grants, so we put that in and we subtract it out, so we know we're gonna get it. And we have it.
Anytime there's a grant offset in the salary line, you'll see it in the detail of the specific salaries. If you look at the detail that spreadsheets that Mitch's office puts together, you'll see the full amount of the salaries minus the grants.
Rick, regarding the splash pad, is there additional staffing? Is there anything other than the water?
I don't think so. I mean, we're gonna, Ellen and I talked about, we'll look at it if we feel like there's a need to have a gate guard. We don't need a light. We have 2 gate guards on it all the time anyway. There's a need to have someone just kind of go over there and manage things, and we could do it. But I think we could do it within the budget we have. We're not asking for anything more for that. But I think we got to see how it goes for a season, and then we'll know better next year. But we talked to some places that have splash pads, Clinton for one. It's like ours, it's kind of near the beach. They don't really have anybody just sitting there, but if there's an issue, somebody just comes over and deals with it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Rick, just to follow up on what you said about the transportation grant, you've got $8,094 in the full-time budget to offset part of the salary.
Okay, I said 11. I was off. Okay.
All right.
Matt, the only other question I had is when you were talking about the meals, I guess you had, a pretty good meeting about that and dealing with the cost of it. I'm assuming that you've explored using ARP funds for that too?
Absolutely, Charles, that one of the things you might not have heard is, we just moved the microphone up, so I think we may not have been clear to everybody, but yes, we're fully anticipating using American Rescue Plan funds, not just for the 22-23 budget, but for the budget we're currently in, because there's going to be a shortfall there as well. And I could think of no better avenue to spend it on than our seniors, so. Okay.
When you use funds like that, though, until they're okayed or anything, we have to expend them first, and it's a reimbursement situation, so we
No,
can't.
we have 3,250,000 sitting in the bank that that they passed along to us. So the items that we have expended and approved under American Rescue Plan are coming out of that designated fund. It's a reserve account or designated account.
It's a separate bank account, yes.
All right, we can look at them again, just trying to figure out budgeting purposes, the mechanics of dealing with some of these increases in utilizing those funds, but we'll deal with that later when we come down to the summaries.
You got it. Thanks, Charles. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Police Department, Municipal Animal Control. I think I see put Chief Hyatt on the line here.
Morning,
There he
everybody.
is. Good morning. Butch, how are
I've also got Commissioner Welch here with me. He's hiding in the background.
you? Oh, he doesn't want any TV time? Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Morning.
Morning, Bob.
Morning.
All right, Butch, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Well, I'll just start off, our budget kind of one of the departments of only a few that we're here 24/7, 365, as everybody knows. I always like to bring that up because a lot of these numbers, when we put them together, is to cover shifts, 7 days a week. Our operating numbers for all the police salary and civilian salary, all of those increases that you see there are from collective bargaining agreements, raises 2.5% in some areas is what those numbers reflect. I know on our overtime, which would be the areas of overtime, training overtime and replacement overtime, we've talked about that in the past and have a little cheat sheet. I have it here. If anybody needs it, I can get it to them about what each one of those covers. But those numbers are also impacted by those raises when we calculate, particularly overtime and replacement overtime. We look at a 3-year average of what we're averaging in those areas. And that's where we come up with the number for the current budget, well, including the increases for the salaries. The training overtime is we look at what we've spent in the previous years, what it costs us to get people in here to get trained for both in service and sending out for training to cover the people who are on training with overtime. Those areas, again, a little bit of a challenge this year with 2021 and 21-22, looking at the numbers with the COVID impacts. As I know, all the other departments are feeling some of those challenges as well. We had to look at the numbers hard in those overtime areas because 2021, our numbers were way down because everything was shut down. And 2021, 22, we're seeing increases because we have a number of people who are either exposed or have had COVID themselves, and we've had to cover those shifts with overtime. So I don't know if there's any questions in the salary side before I move into the operating area.
Mary Jane?
Butch, is there any argument to be made that a portion of the replacement salary increase has a direct correlation to replacing officers because of COVID?
It does. And the number that I put here is not directly related to COVID. Again, it's a 3-year average, but we have had to replace people for COVID in the past. It's like any other sick time. I'm just, indicating that over the last budget season, we saw an increase in that area because of some of the impacts of the COVID, people being out with COVID, either exposures or sickness themselves. But so that plays into that 3-year average for that number.
The reason I ask is because the fire department was able to demonstrate in their replacement salaries an increase specifically related to COVID. And we were able to address some of that increase through ARPA funding. Would you be able to demonstrate that a similar number related to COVID?
Yeah, and we've put in anytime we have a replacement directly related to COVID or a COVID exposure, we do fill out and put in the reimbursement forms. So that number should be available with anything that we replace strictly related to COVID. And again, as I say, those numbers, whatever we spent in that replacement line for those to cover those areas is included in my 3-year average to give me that number for replacement too.
Right, so you're speaking specifically to the forms I received from Lucy, I'm assuming.
Right.
So we'll be able to use those forms for ARPA funding in the current year. I'm looking to know if you could estimate for us what your fiscal 23 number related to COVID may be, and we should be able to offset with ARPA funding through your budget.
Okay, I can get those numbers. And I guess it's going to be a little bit of just taking a look at the numbers that we had for 2021 and for 21-22, and seeing what those numbers are and coming up with an average or an estimate of how that's going to impact the replacement numbers.
Yeah, the fire department, I think, went back 4 or 5 years and showed what it is in a normal year compared to a COVID year. So if you could do something similarly, even if you speak to Mike about it, then we can make some adjustment in this area.
Yeah, we can do that. That's not hard. And like I said, because we do the 3-year average, we have that going back a number of years with what it's costing us on each year. So we can pull that number up pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. Any other questions on the salary side? Okay. All right, Butch, what else you want to?
Just in the operating side, try to keep this pretty tight here. There are some numbers that you see that kind of jump up at you when you look at things like gasoline and things like that. But that I think I think it's about a 57-cent increase in gas going forward. That number jumped up quite a bit for us. When we calculate things like gasoline and maintenance on the cars and things like that, we also look at what our staffing is. If we're up to full staff, obviously we're putting more people in more cars, more miles, more gasoline is being used. So I try to budget it for a full staff. If we're down numbers, those numbers may come down and fluctuate a little bit, but I try to budget that based on a full staff using the vehicles, both for gasoline and for the vehicle maintenance. Some of the other areas where we saw some increases, education payments, those were contractual agreements, and as well, some people had retired who did not have education, and we brought in some new hires who did. So those numbers have gone up because of both of those reasons. Utilities are pretty close, to what we were last year, estimating based on the information provided through finance. Some of the other areas that you might see bumps is maintenance and service contracts. We've got a number of notifications from some of our contractors with increases. I think some of that has to do with supply chain issues and some other issues, I think probably related directly or indirectly to COVID. So we did get some increases in those areas. Did go down in the copier lease. I know finance was able to get some numbers for us that actually drove that number down a little bit. So that was a positive there. In our training and development, there's a number of training. That number went up about $5,000, and there's a number of areas of training, including crisis intervention training, de-escalation, use of force, crowd control, which are all mandated through the state or through the police accountability bill moving forward. So those are trainings that we've either added or increased in our training budget because they are mandatory for us to now train our officers in some of those areas above and beyond what we were doing in the past. So that's directly reflected in that area. And I know if you look at police medical, that stayed flat, but that number has been impacted. It was impacted last year's budget, and I've kept the number the same because of police accountability, where we've got to now do your analysis on all of our officers every 3 years based on their certification date. So we do roughly about 13 officers a year. We've got to pay for your analysis. And we do mental health training. We do about 20% of the officers per year on a rotating schedule. We're also paying through that through behavioral health. So that's included in that budget, that line item. And if there's any questions on that.
Yeah, Butch, thanks for highlighting the cost. I know Charles will be sensitive to this as well. This is another one of those unfunded mandates. While well-intended on the Police Accountability Act, it did have downstream effects on police departments throughout the state. So thanks for highlighting that.
Okay.
Again, Matt, is, because of that situation, I guess that's not really ARP though, is it?
No. No, that'd be a stretch to write the to write the parallel impact on COVID.
Yeah, it's okay. I understand.
Got it. All right. Anything else for Butch? No. Hearing none. No. We're good. Butch, as always, well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
And Commissioner Welsh, thanks for your assistance on that budget.
Thank you. Have a great day, folks.
Got it. All right. Item 7. Town properties.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Steve.
How are you?
Good. How about you?
I am well, thank you.
Good to hear.
All right. Line 1, full-time salaries. Recently, the contract was negotiated, so those are set. Line 2, part-time salaries, same deal, contract as negotiated. Line number 3, overtime, keeping that the same as this year. Number 4, stipends, also the same as this year. Line number 5, again, same as this year. Line number 6, utilities, pretty much the same. There's a small increase, but we also, as you know, we changed all the lights to LED, so a lot of that has come down. Line number 7 is the same, 1,500. Line number 8, street lighting, that is 18,000. It went up 5% according to the finance estimate. Street light maintenance, I'm keeping that the same, 13,500.
Went up.
Went up 500.
Went up 500 on that, Steve.
Right. Fire hydrant rental, that's the big one this year. We added in the budgets, I think 13 new hydrants from the water main project. So that went up, I think, $124,000 a year.
Is there also a rate increase buried in there too?
The rate increase is hitting now already, so we already had that in, the numbers already in. They had a rate increase January 1 of this year, so I was able to include.
Okay.
Steve, this is Sandy. Excuse me, 13 new hydrants.
$1,000 hydrant. Yeah.
So how many do we have in the whole town?
I think it's 350, if I remember correctly.
Or is it 371?
371 now with the new ones.
I think it's 371.
It just seems like a big jump for 13 if
Oh, the hydrants are not inexpensive, each one.
Yeah, but if
No.
you do the math, if you do the math, it's
30 or for 420.
I don't know, I don't know if it's 13 new ones. We already had some of the new
Well,
ones
they all-
for this year's budget.
I think
So,
the significant portion of this is a rate case.
Ricky, but there are additional hydrants in there as well.
Yeah, pardon me. If you do, as Sandy
So
says, if you
these
do the math,
hydrants are not,
go ahead, Charles.
well, this is not installation of the hydrants. This is the annual usage fee.
Right.
Right.
So that is not, was not in the calculation of the payback for the individual users. Is
No,
that, okay.
Bob?
Well, as Sandy points out, I can't find my calculator on my desk, but I can tell you 360 or 350 prior to these additional 13, you do the math and you add, that's much less than 10,000 each. They're 9,000 each that these are costing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's,
so-
so I presume that the most of the upgrade here, most of the increased cost must be a rate increase.
yeah, I don't have, I didn't bring up last year's, but I have 377 hydrants this year. For a monthly cost of just shy of 9,000, plus we pay another fee for 31,000 just to have it.
Yeah. Adding
It's
3% more hydrants does not equate to a 30%
Right.
increase in
Yeah.
the overall cost, so.
I'd have to pull up last year's calculation and this year's calculation. We can certainly look at that
Great.
when the board
Now,
select.
if memory serves, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we were over $500,000 and then it fell
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
and now we're back up again.
Okay, we'll do a little digging on.
Yeah, I
how
have
much
all of it. We can certainly look at it when the selectmen meet. I have all the documentation.
Well, I partly asked it because it might come across to citizens that even though we're all in support of the water main project, it might be like a hidden cost we didn't know about, but it really isn't because it's other factors in this increase.
Yeah, and we knew about that cost
Yeah,
going in,
no, right,
so.
but it,
Others in town don't pay specifically for their own fire hydrants, so why would this be any different?
Right.
Correct.
You know,
Right. It's for our benefit, for
Right.
fire protection.
Yeah.
I think the residents benefit obviously too,
Right,
but,
Right.
Yeah, the residents benefit in terms of their homeowners insurance.
Home,
right, but without the fire hydrants, the fire department couldn't, right?
Okay, all right. Steve, let's continue.
line number 11, cemetery maintenance is the same. Uniform and allowance is also the same for employees at $300. Repair and maintenance went down 4,000. That's primarily because the 3-year contract with the car charger is due this year. So it's in this year's budget. Next year, it should go down to $4,000, which is what that 3-year contract is. Line 14 is about the same. It went up a little because of supplies, and that's with more COVID masks and whatnot. Line number 15 is remaining the same. Line number 16 is also remaining the same. So the big increase is due to the hydrants. Everything else is pretty comparable.
Agreed, yeah, it's an $8,000 increase, so. Any questions? Any other questions for Steve? No. Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8, engineering, in person.
Been here in a long time, so stop in and say hi. You haven't changed.
I'd just like to add that Janice will also be doing the waste transfer station, which is on tomorrow's agenda. 'Cause
Okay.
It's something that I normally in the past have reported on,
Right.
but because of the new, well, the put back in place structure of the transfer station, she'll be reporting on that as well this morning.
Great.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Janice.
Good morning, everyone. So again, full-time salaries, you see the increase is based on contract negotiations. I'm happy to report we're up to full staff in the department. Things are going well. Let's see. Expenses and travel, we keep a $200 kind of standing line item there in case we need it, but obviously in the past few years, we haven't needed it. Uniform and clothing allowance, again, is for the assistant engineer as part of the contract. They're allowed the $300.
Contracted services, we're keeping that the same. As you know, that had increased a couple years back with regard to really trying to keep up with our requirements for the MS4 permit for stormwater testing. And that process has been ongoing. It's been a little challenging with COVID to make as much headway, and was hoping maybe I'd need to increase this at this point in time, but I'm gonna just keep it the same at this point until we really get a accounting of how we can maybe get more done in the near future. So we'll just hold that the same at 20, with the additional being used for random environmental consulting and survey work we may need done for some smaller projects in-house. The big one that went up is the hazardous waste disposal. As you know, we had a satellite collection here in Guilford last year. And thanks to a couple of our volunteers, along with Joe, who helped out as well, that it was a resounding success. We had great participation, and therefore, our numbers really increase in terms of the participation, and we're charged by participation. Number of households that come to the waste disposal center, either it has waste in New Haven or in this particular satellite. And we intend to do it again this year, this April. So those costs have increased to kind of reflect that added participation, which is a good thing. And then copier and leases, that went down a little bit based on the negotiated new contract for our, I carry all this for Town Hall South in my budget, but the shared copier in the office area, the cost went down a little bit, so that's reflected in that line item as well. Office supplies, holding that steady. Same with minor tools and things that we may need for the department, doing field work and such. Road striping is another one that I've gone up on. Public Works carries this in their budget as well. They carry the majority of it when we kind of split departments. I kept some and they kept the majority. They primarily do the center line striping and some of the outskirts stuff. And I've been focusing on the town center parking stripes for around the green and things like that, crosswalks. And with the Safe Streets Task Force, there's going to be some recommendations for added striping for safety and crosswalks and things like that. So I'm trying to account for that in the budget going forward with an increase here, and keeping up with the striping around the town centers. As you can see, it wears away and needs to be replaced regularly.
Will some of that be aided by the water company once they repave? Will that reduce some of our needs for striping?
No, so the state, so the water company is all done with their work. The state is expected to come through to do Route 146, a repave. I think pretty much from Route 1, I think to Sachem's Head Road or Sam Hill Road or thereabouts is their limits. They take care of the repainting of the crosswalks in the state right of way and any other of that striping that needs to be done as part of a paving project. This is solely for our parking spaces they don't take care of, and any of the crosswalks on town roads that they don't take care of. And we also have used this money on the parking lot behind, off of Water Street and things like that. Next line item, that's gone down a little bit because the new assistant town engineer is not a licensed PE at this point, so I'm not accounting for having to pay for his license renewal at this time. So that went down by the $285 annual fee for that. Education and training, any opportunities we have for that, we'd like to take advantage of. And then vehicle maintenance went down a little bit because we now have, 2 newer cars in the fleet. So hopefully that will be more than enough to cover gas and any other minor repairs we may need if it comes to that. So that's pretty much the engineering department expenditures.
The hazardous waste material increase obviously is pretty dramatic, but as you said, the response in the community was phenomenal, including an inquiry I got from Charles, I think it was earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, where we gonna include that in the budget? And it is in our current budget for a collection date to be determined, or have you already arranged?
Yeah, I can't remember the date, but it's the weekend before Easter, so I think it's like
I should put that
April
on my
9th, I
calendar.
think. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
saying I need to have to put that on my calendar?
I'm gonna keep trying to find other volunteers.
Right.
I'm hoping to get some, you know,
Trained.
high school kids or something, but.
I love spending a Saturday morning back in Guilford.
That's a good point. We can actually do that because I've just reached out to the principal at the high school for a candidate to sit on the Sustainable Guilford Task Force.
Okay.
We had a high schooler on there in the past, and they've got a couple of candidates, so we'll
Yeah, I tried that for Hazardous because as you know, we have to staff Hazardous in New Haven twice a year as well. And this year I did reach out to the high schools and I had kids who said they were going to go, but then it got all screwed up. So the nice thing right now is that at Hazardous in New Haven, due to COVID, they've added staffing, you know, the paid staffing to help run the process down there because of the challenges during COVID. So that's worked out well if, you know, but we do need to make sure we get our volunteership up so that we can, you know, take care of our now 3 times a year that we have to provide some staffing to the cause.
excellent. Any other questions for Janice?
I was just wondering, is there information in the packet about the usage increase?
Yeah, so I did bring the Hazardous Central, RWA runs it and they do a great job of reporting to us, like, you know, all the different information in terms of costs and even participation. So she had let's see, so for Guilford, our participation went up from fiscal year 2020 from 463 to 955.
Oh, boy.
So we had a dramatic increase with having the satellite in our town. And
Janice, is that something you could send a PDF to me and I can put it on ClearGov and they'll be able to have that?
Yep.
I see it's not on there at the moment.
Yeah, and so obviously there's a direct correlation to the cost increase. There are some minor increase in overall costs for doing business through Hazardous, but the majority of our cost increase is because of participation increase.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Anything further? Anyone on remote? Any questions? No? Don't see any. Oh, go ahead. No?
Waste transfer.
You're all set. Okay, thanks, Josh. Waste transfer.
Okay, so waste transfer this year, we're gonna contribute the same as last year. We're looking at an annual contribution of 70,000 to waste transfer station and 15,000 to recycling operations for a total of 85,000. As Mary Jane had mentioned, the committee, you know, the advisory committee for the transfer station has been revitalized. They've been meeting for about a year now, getting their kind of feet under them, learning about the station and, you know, the history of it and some background information. But we've noticed, you know, that we're lagging behind in terms of the expenditures are greater than our income, you know, our revenues every year. So we're looking at likely having to increase this cost for each town going forward, because Madison is supposed to contribute the same each year as well. But also we may be having to look at fee increases in the near future, and that's going to be, you know, further study underway by the committee, and then they would bring it to the Board of Selectmen for any recommendations. The nice thing is we have locked in our contracts with our current haulers for the next 3 and 5 years. So we know what our costs are, at least in terms of, you know, those fees going forward, to then make a determination of whether we need to make any adjustments on what we're charging residents.
And we're in a very good position relative to a lot of other communities. The waste disposal is one of the hot issues amongst my peers throughout the state, particularly with the closing of the Mirror plant, or the intended closing of the Mirror plant up in the north central part of the state. So being locked in for as long as we are, I think it puts us in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and then it gives us time to really plan it out going forward too. So
just might add, Janice is doing a very good job of shepherding the new waste transfer advisory committee. There are some pretty strong personalities on there who want to do a lot of different things, and Janice does a great job doing managing the expectations in the program. So, but it's unfortunate that committee was basically vacant for
years,
15, 20 years. And while, you know, there can be some challenges with a group like that, I think their intent is well founded and they're on the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, and it's important, you know, that we take a look at it, especially in these changing times in the industry, that we really start taking a look at it, and we're seeing that we're, lagging behind in terms of revenues and versus expenditures, so.
And Janice and I are also participating in some of the DEP and COG initiatives around food waste diversion programs and something taking, that's they say up to 30 to 40% of the tonnage in waste. If you can divert that to biodiesel or whatever, what's the outfit up in Southern?
Oh, yeah, the
Quantum,
yeah.
Yeah, so we are part of a group that's talking about a pilot program to do something here in town.
Mhm.
Any other questions on waste transfer?
Just with that committee that you just mentioned, we're still looking for a clerk.
Yes.
If anyone knows of anybody, it meets at 8:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah, first Thursday, I think it's first Thursday of the month now, where we've changed our schedule too, so.
All right, thank you, Jim.
All right, thanks so much.
All right, item number 9, Public Works. Tom's here and Chairman Mark Rocket. Mark, good to see you again.
He looks frozen on the screen. I think there must be a
Mark is
connection
frozen.
issue.
Oh, he's moving.
Oh, there he is now.
There you are.
Here we go. Good
All
morning,
right.
everybody.
Good morning, Mark. All right. Who's presenting? Tom, are you presenting? Tom, you're muted, I think.
Okay,
Got you now.
all righty, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this year for a crew of 22 employees at this point coming up, we still have one guy that we're waiting for. The cost is going to be $1,363,647 for salaries. Not much of an increase due to people leaving and the new members coming in. As far as work for other departments on the work orders, we put down a negative 2,500 on this, but at this point, we're really not even, when you look at it, the golf course is out at this point and everything like that. So this really has no importance. I look at it that way, but we'll still at a negative 2,500. So part-time and seasonal salaries, we're at 34,302. Again, not much of an increase here at all. And that's to pay for the attendance down at the stump dump and for my seasonal drivers. In a way, I think this should be a little bit higher, but we'll go with the 302. Board and Commission Secretary, not much of a rise there at 1,406. Overtime, we will stay at $100,000. And see, I did cut back a little bit on summertime discretionary. Down trees and winter storms is uncontrollable on my end, so this is just an estimate. Expense and travel, I upped it a little bit because I use this money here mostly to feed my crew during emergencies. Utilities, we're at 44,501. Again, on this, we are now taking on 50 driveways, so I'm not sure. I have no background as far as what their costs would be, so we just upped it a little bit at 44,501.
Tom, just a little confusion here. Rick has already included utilities for 52 driveway in his budget, so we may have an opportunity here.
Okay, very good. Like I said, at this point, I wasn't sure which way it was going to go.
Right.
Okay. Fuel, I'm down a little bit on fuel. It seems like we did better last year, so I'm sticking to $60,000 for fuel. Building maintenance, roughly staying the same. We're still, the biggest cost is the pump outs that we're gonna have to do because of we do not have a wash bay at this point, so it costs more to pump out my holding tanks. Radio maintenance was staying the same. Equipment repair and maintenance, I'm up a little bit. Our commission went over this with, me and the commission went over this quite a bit. We have a tendency to have a little bit of disagreement on this, but we came to final conclusion of just going up a little bit on this, but my costs are, and going towards the future too, as everybody knows, the cost of parts and even getting stuff at this point, it's a lot higher. Uniform and clothing, I went up a little bit because I have an extra employee at $22,000. Contracted services, we're willing to stay the same pretty much with that one too. The tub grinder, again, I have to figure at least 1.5 times a year, should be almost 2 times a year with the amount of volume that we do have down there. We just ground 6,500 yards last time in a short period of time of less than 6 months. So we're sticking to the 33,250 over there. Copy and supplies basically staying the same. Office supplies, I'm only up 100. Minor tools, I just went up $500 because of the extra cost that we are finding on tools. Summer road maintenance, due to the fact that we do have bond money and we are looking towards doing Briarwood. I cut that down to 245. The chip seal's the main part of that thing at 172. And I was giving myself money for prep for chip seals with basically little overlays, my catch basin materials and my patching material, 15,000 there, and sweeper parts staying the same because we did really well this year with minimizing how many breakdowns that we had to change out stuff. So I'm looking good there. Winter road maintenance, we're up on that one there. We do have that tracking system that we're using that also will give codes to from the vehicles that help us determine what the issues are when the trucks break down. Cutting edges are up a little bit, just because of the cost of steel. So we're up a little bit higher at 164,550. Road striping, I'm up a little bit more on that too. I know that Janice mentioned that, for safe roads and stuff like that, but also I may end up chip sealing Westlake Avenue this year. So that's going to be a longer stripe. And there's a bunch of other spots that I've been looking that really need some updating on the striping. So I added a slight, well, it's about $8,000 increase there. Equipment rental, most of that is paying for my weather service. And I'm still looking for time to do some screening down there on a pile that we probably have at least 10,000 yards down at the pit that we could screen and maybe help us out on topsoil costs. So I put in money for a screener, rental of a screener. Permits 450, that stays the same. And then education, I'm up a little bit, mainly because of the software that we have, the changes that we have to make over here in the vehicle maintenance area. The cost has gone up over there. So I went up $500 on that point. So all together, we're running under 2% with a budget of $2,341,943.
Tom, thank you for that presentation. Any specific questions? Tom?
I got to ask about fuel, Tom.
Yeah.
Somebody else mentioned fuel's up 57%, and you haven't gone up. That looks
57 cents, he said.
Cents, I beg your pardon, 57 cents, which is significant. Are we okay there?
Yeah, at this point, we're okay. From what my usage was, I was looking at it and I feel that, we're hanging within that 63,000, 60,000, I think that will be fine. Again, that's the best estimate that we can make, because I don't know as far as what the cost will be in the wintertime and stuff like that, so.
Sure. Okay.
Do you think that some of the fuel usage is the result of us having newer equipment? Or does the newer equipment get better mileage, let's say?
Yes and no. I mean, it's determined that, because they have where they'll shut down during an idle if someone's not in the truck. But overall, with loads on these trucks and there's really not much of a savings between the older ones, because the new ones with all the emission controls, it ends up coming out pretty much the same.
Go out to bid again for fuel.
We're out to bid in December, the same time we do every year. Unfortunately, we caught a window. Would have been nicer if it gone out in August or something. But traditionally, we go out in early December, late November, early December. And those are one-year contracts, so we're locked in for this year. Any other questions for Tom or Mark? No? Hearing none. Well, that's obviously an under 2% budget. Really good work. I know it's a tight budget, but thank you for bringing in where you did, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Show,
Okay.
like, get break time before they come out.
Yeah, let's take a little health break.
Sure.
5 minutes.
Time to show me this again. Sure, you have to do.
All right. Thank you, Tracy.
Yay.
Hey, Ken.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good, thank you. I want to tell you that we're a little surprised. We weren't sure whether it was 11 o'clock or 12:30. We got two different letters, so apologize for the delay.
No problem.
But thank you for, obviously wanting to sit down and go through the budgets this year, including the fire departments. I will tell you that the Board of Fire Commissioners has reviewed the budget that you have in front of you. And we're in agreement that what has been outlined in the budget is what is necessary to operate in the upcoming fiscal year. Before I get started, I'd like to ask, which document are you all working from so that I can make sure that we're all on the same one? I had submitted a letter on January 12th that I believe has a letter and a summary sheet attached to it, or are you using something else?
They have the summary sheet that I sent. I have to, let me look online to see if it's been attached to your budget.
So when you say summary sheet, Mary Jane, are you talking about the one that?
The one I emailed to Mike and Charlie.
Yeah, this one. Yeah. All right, I was not, that's not the one that I had until this morning. But more than happy. I think what's most important is the information that goes along with those numbers versus the differences in the numbers on my summary sheet versus yours. So
before you start, I'm looking on ClearGov and there isn't anything attached. So if you could provide me a copy of your information,
Sure.
I can share it with the selectmen.
We'll send that over after the meeting, after we're done presenting, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Having said that, I want to say that probably one of the most complete years of evaluating the budget and the averages. And actually, not only have we gone back 3 years, but the administration has gone back 4 and 5 years to look at the trends in our budget. So I'm pleased to say that the numbers that you're looking at take into consideration 4 years of the average, as well as our major expenditures that put us over the last few years. That being said, we also looked at current and forecasted requirements for the overall operations of the department. And I can assure you, with everything that's taken place over the last 2 years, that those are becoming more frequent. But that being also said, we are a front runner when it comes to seeking and obtaining state and federal grants to offset our expenses and to increase our revenues. So that's a good thing. Also in this budget, the proposed budget does not include an increase in staffing at all. We're staying status quo with our staffing as we go forward. As we all know, and I started to mention, the last 2 years has been a challenge with unexpected and unforecasted, challenges, things that we didn't anticipate, both not only for the fire department, but overall in the town, as you are well aware. But having said that, the fire department will continue to be financially responsible, not only in personnel, but supplies and equipment challenges as we go forward. We have been a front line in the COVID virus pandemic, which has given us expenses that we didn't anticipate or would not have had 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And in a recent discussion that I had with the first selectman, we tried to kind of isolate those things out so that we didn't bump the budget up based on just COVID-related expenses. But our department has been a forerunner in testing, vaccinations, booster clinics, homebound patients, assisting other town departments, including the health department, the public works department, et cetera. As a result, that has increased some of our expenses, but again, COVID related. The goal in this budget, as always, is to protect the people of the town of Guilford and all those that pass through it each and every day, as well as protecting the staff that we have in place from not only the day-to-day things that they encounter, but also from COVID. Over the last year, the department has seen an increase, and I went back to look at this. Over the last 3 years, we have increased our calls to well over 3,650 calls, but almost to the 4,000 range. And that includes every incident that we have in the town. And I will just quickly identify such things as medicals, water rescues, marine incidents, search and rescues throughout our Guilford Trail system, fires, motor vehicle accidents, et cetera. The attached budget, which you will see, reflects probably the largest increases in the salaries line items. And that's due to negotiated contractual agreements. And the biggest piece is the elimination of the SAFER grant this year or next year. So the overall budget presented, and again, based on my summary, we had an increase of $337,081, which was 6.5, but I believe that's been updated to reflect an increase of $270,317 or a 5.2% budget increase. I'd like to go through the full-time salary or the salaries line items with you, and I'll entertain any questions as we go along or after the salary presentation. As I mentioned to you, last year, we were very fortunate that we had an extension in the SAFER grant, which allowed us to recover from the federal government approximately $200,000. Next year, we will have no offsets in the SAFER grant. So in the full-time salaries, you'll see an increase of approximately $126,358. And again, that's due to the elimination of the SAFER grant. That's increase in the management contracts. And again, we do not have a contract settled yet with the IAFF, but there is a pending agreement out there for hopefully approval. In the part-time salaries account,
Can I just interject? It's Mitch.
Who's that?
Mitch Goldblatt.
Yeah, Mitch.
Okay, wanted to just so the board's aware and the board of finances, Ken just said, we do not have the contracted salaries for next year or this present year, since we have a contract negotiation, which hopefully is coming to an end soon. So the monies that might have to be applied to these full-time salaries, in addition to what you see here, is in the reserve for personnel. Okay? Yep. All right, thanks, Ken, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So that's pending approval. The part-time salaries account is, again, it's only due to the increase in the contractual wage increases that we have in place today. The commission clerk, that's a.
Ken, this is,
hold on.
Ken, this
Go
is
back.
Sandy Ruoff. So the increases in the salaries, both full-time and part-time, don't reflect any potential raises for 22, 23 right now because the negotiations haven't been completed? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The part-time set, Sandy.
All right.
The
So-
part-time is not affected by the contract, but the full-time will be affected by the new contract.
So then, I'm sorry, I think I'm getting a little brain dead here. So the 126,358 is because we don't have the SAFER grant anymore?
It's
Right.
also, it's
Yes.
that, plus there's people who are moving up steps anyway, from a C to a B to an A, if you look at the specific salaries. Those increases under the current contract, they will get, and then on top of that will be whatever the GW, the gross wage increase will be for the contract.
All right, so that line item reflects increases for the chief, the assistant chief,
The chief has no increase this year,
right,
but contractually, the assistant chief, deputy chief does, that's
and
there.
then the civilian employees,
Yeah, civilian employees are covered under the GEA contract,
right,
so they're covered.
right. And you said that there is the steps already built in here?
Correct.
Right,
But
That's
steps not
Right.
reflective of the new position rate.
correct.
Right.
Steps at the current rate.
Right.
Plus, we don't have the offset for SAFER, but that increase is not all SAFER.
No, it's partially SAFER, but it's the other things that you just mentioned.
Are you clear on that, Sandy?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And that,
Okay, go ahead, Ken. Oh,
and that pretty much it will follow through with, your overtime and your replacement salaries again. The overtime is, again, it represents coverage for hours worked over what we call premium pay. So that's hours above the normal rate of pay over 212 hours in a month. So does everybody understand? I think MJ, you do, but does everybody understand the premium pay for the overtime piece over?
yeah, I do. The question is though,
Yeah.
a 31% increase needs a little bit of explaining, Lucy.
Okay. I'm gonna let Mike go ahead. He'll explain it too from that.
Hey, Mike.
How are you? So the full-time salaries piece, we've covered that. The overtime and replacements are in direct correlation because replacement salary is used when somebody takes vacation, sick time, personal time, or any allotted time. Two of the biggest increases in those areas are sick time use, and we have a military deployment. So as of right now, our member from the military is not due back for about 6 months into next year's budget. His base salary is $70,000. So one of the big increases, about half of that, $35,000, and also the increased use of sick time. So COVID, and I worked with MJ and Mitch over the last 2 years, has really put an increase in sick time. The big piece of that is that the CDC has required people as of last year to be out for 10 days for quarantine periods, and just recently switched it to 5 days and then 5 days back in for masks for vaccinated personnel. One of the big pieces of both of those is almost $100,000 increase just in those two areas for replacement and overtime. And at overtime, we're at time and a half, which also is pushed when there's more time off, or meaning when people are out longer. more people are likely to go into what's called that FLSA or premium pay. So those are the biggest two driving factors of replacement salaries. And also we had some of our original members hired under SAFER hit their 5-year mark this year, which is about 9 of them getting an additional week of vacation. So that's another, I'd say, pretty good contributing factor, almost $17,000 right there with contractual vacation time.
So Mike, this is Sandy. So there's increased sick time use, hence more replacement costs. When and if COVID ever leaves us and we go back to regular sick time use, do you think next year or perhaps in the budget after that, this will, I guess it'll never go down, but
The goal is to hopefully, yes, go down. Estimated based on 5 years use of sick time for the 2 previous years from this year and last year, we were pretty consistent at about 3,300 hours per year. I'd say normal sick time between people getting injured, workers' comp, sick time. That's been consistent average. So I only estimated the overage. So what the difference was between those 3 years and the last 2. So, the goal and the intent was to add that American Rescue Funds money to potentially offset what's COVID related. And so that's, obviously the biggest piece of that increase is those 2 contributing factors in that piece.
because I remember going back now from the initial SAFER reasoning and why we wanted to add 8 people and all that. I thought some of the replacement and or overtime might be impacted positively with 8 new people, but not really.
Well, these last 2 years have not helped, and some of that additional expense too is a lot of the additional duties that we've been taking on as a fire department. Vaccine clinics, things that not say I never thought we'd be getting into. And I'd say the last 2 years, those are probably some of the biggest contributing factors. And looking hopefully this year in the budget for additional ways to offset those, but only look at why. We've been doing a lot of work with FEMA public assistance and trying to reimburse certain pieces and parts. Sick time was not one of those allowable projects, even though it was directly related. So using the American Rescue Funds for those opportunities. And, we look at the test kit handout, anyway, we had to stand up some additional people for test kits, things that are not the norm for us. So a lot of those things, I think, are big pieces of the driving factor of why those accounts are going back up.
Thank you.
All right, Ken, thank you. You wanna-
No, not at all. Continuing, the stipends, they went up $4,200, and that's from firefighter EMTs to firefighter paramedics on staff. Approximately now we have, I believe it's pretty much a 50-50 split between firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics. And that's the increase as the result of that. The replacement salaries, Mike pretty much just explained it, and it's pretty consistent. You have the increase in personal sick and vacation days that are earned due to time on the position. The military deployment, as Mike just identified, 11 firefighters adding basically 11 weeks or 1 week each to their vacation time. And the one thing that's part of that you can't really forecast, you try to, is the workers' compensation cases. No matter how much training and safety that you put into effect or that you do on the job, there is ultimately each year you have a workers' compensation case or 2, and as a result, that's where the replacements salaries are covered in there or used there. So that pretty much is the overall, the salaries, if you will, the full-time right down to the replacement salaries. And it's not broken out on the sheet that I'm looking at from Mary Jane, but I know when I originally did it was almost $290,000. But again, having not having the SAFER grant and having had that this year, that was $200,000 of it. So I'm not sure what those columns add up to on her spreadsheet. Before we move on, are there any questions, comments, concerns, anything that we can answer?
No.
Anybody?
But anyone else? No? All right, let's proceed, Ken, please.
Thank you. The next piece of the budget is obviously the variable expenses. Fire marshal expense, we have no increase. We remain at the 1275. Same with civil preparedness. Trying to get Charlie to spend that $303, but every year we seem to do he seems to do pretty good there. No increase. Utilities, that's per town contracts, is in usage, obviously. There's no increase there. The fuel is up $8,000, and that was provided to us based on the contract for fuel that the town secured, as well as the usage, and again, using the usage over the last 4 years. So it's an $8,000 increase. Building maintenance. Some things that we encountered over the last couple of years, and especially this year, is building maintenance, such as the need for sanitation supplies, disinfectants, periodic cleaning and sterilization of the common rooms and the staff rooms here in the fire station, and just simply an increase in the costs from the vendors. That's obviously something that I think all of us, even when we purchase our own goods and services, are experiencing. And we're experiencing the same thing here when it comes to supplies for the building. Radio receivers, there is a deduction of $1,056. Copier lease service, there's a decrease of $1,196, and again, that's per the town contract. A decrease in the health and welfare. Fortunately, some of the things that we might have encountered last year, we do not need to have in place this year. So we are down $3,500, a decrease there. And fire prevention, again, a minimal decrease, but $571. Very similar to building maintenance and some of the supplies, the operating supplies is up $15,000. And combination of things, increase in the cost of operating supplies, as I mentioned, with the vendor supplies in building maintenance, but also replacement equipment and also EMS medications. EMS medications continue to increase in cost, but we're also being mandated by the sponsor hospital to carry certain medications on our paramedic units to be a paramedic service. So those are things that we didn't have in the past, and those are things that are reflected now in the budget increase in operating supplies. Marine Division is a zero increase. CMed membership, which is now our Valley Shore Mutual, our Valley Shore Regional Medical Service, is no increase there. Education and training, there's no increase in that budget. And vehicle maintenance. And I know that we always have a discussion, or we've had a discussion in past years about vehicle maintenance. As has been discussed, one of the things that we cannot do, and I don't mean to be, sarcastic here, but is to go out and open up the trucks, the hoods, and say, this alternator is going to go, this generator is going to go. We just don't know what things occur during the course of the year based on usage, based on the life or the year of the equipment. But we do know that over the last 2 years, if you look at our budget, you'll see that the vehicle maintenance has been one of those categories that's been traditionally over. And again, looking back to last year, the year before, we had 3 major vehicle repairs. The year before, we had 2 major vehicle repairs. that accounted for our overage in our budget. So trying to forecast that is difficult, but we try to do the best. And again, looking at the expenditures over the last 4 years, the 25,595, we feel comfortable that that will be what we will need to do what we need to do to maintain the vehicles and hopefully eliminate some of those major expenses. That being said, the variable piece of the budget is, according to my numbers, was increasing by $47,579. So, but again, not looking at Mary Jane. So overall, our budget is increasing by $270,317, which is a 5.281% increase over last year. Any questions on that piece before I go on with something else?
Just the safer grant itself, I'm trying to remember what the number was. That piece alone accounted for how much of the full-time salaries?
Mitch has it from last year.
Last year, they threw $101,000 in the full-time salaries. Was last year, plus $4,200 towards the stipends were on last year, and both of those numbers are now gone.
Because keep in mind, that also covered employee benefits, so there were offsets in other budgets throughout.
So there are really two exercises we need to do here, Ken, and I don't mean to quibble, but what is not reflected in these numbers is the actual salary cost for the increases for the rank and file, right?
Just the, once again, the rank and file who are scheduled July 1st for an upgrade.
Right.
Will receive that regardless of the contract, based on the current contract. And then on top of that, there'll be a general wage increase that everyone will get, and will affect right across the board.
Right, so that's gonna take this 5.2 number and turn it into something like 6 whatever, right?
It could. Like I say, I've tried to account as best I can for that amount we'd have to move in your current reserve service.
Understood. So I just wanted to make sure we look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit different, based on the fact that the contract is hopefully about to be ratified.
Right. Right.
So is the contract over, I mean, when was their contract up? In 22 or it's 21 or
21.
So it's gonna be retroactive
For 2 years. We've got retroactive for a year and then plus this current year, so we'll make adjustments all over. We'll make adjustments to this year, or however Mary Jane wants to do that, and then to the next fiscal year as well. Literally the contract's being voted on as we speak. We should have results by the end of this week, my understanding. And then it'll come to the Board of Selectmen, obviously, if ratified.
All right, any other questions for Ken at this point? All right, what else have you got, Ken?
Well, on the positive side, as you know, each year, the ambulance revenue we generate, and last year we had an exceptional year, more than we even anticipated. But we're looking at the anomalies last year, and we are confident that the $885,000 is the budget or the target that we are recommending to the Board of Selectmen for next year. And there's a couple of things, as many of you know, or don't know, maybe you do. We're always a month in the rears with ambulance revenues. But there's another piece of that. We collect revenues from years, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago. And that's one of the things that occurred last year, is we saw a bump in some of the revenues that we received from the previous year, or the billings that we did the previous year, which built up our number. It was well over $1 million, I think. But you have to take that out of the equation when you're forecasting based on the number of calls, based on the history. So the 885 is something that we're recommending to the Board of Selectmen for ambulance revenue in 22, 23.
Thank you for that. Any questions on the revenue side? Okay. Anything further?
Communication.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Okay, anything
right.
further on fire? I think we're,
Yeah, is there anything else on fire?
I think we're good. Ken, as usual, very well done professional presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, communications up.
Hang on, I'm going all the way over.
Oh.
I'm here. Here comes civil preparedness, it's $303 budget.
Take that picture on the left side of the wall there. It's a compare and contrast there.
Hey,
Are we ready?
we are ready.
Okay, communications, the salaries is due to wage increases. The overtime salaries is, again, reflective of, increased vacation time for one employee and the wage increases. Telephones has increased, from 195 to 217,882. And the biggest increase in that is about $11,000 due to Everbridge. Which again, is probably something that Harp can take care of. Our normal contract is about 5,000. I'm projecting that we're gonna use about 25,000 this year in the present fiscal year. And I'm hoping that COVID will be gone and we only use additional 11,000. But we have not budgeted for that $25,000 this year.
I think that's there could well be a rationale for American Rescue Plan funds for that, some of that stuff, because this is directly related to the messaging we're sending out on a weekly basis, correct?
Absolutely. I meant to discuss with you earlier, Matt, about the partially using HARP for that money.
Right, well, I think we're gonna,
Receiving a $25,000 invoice thereabouts on top of the annual 5,000 for the use of the Everbridge system, which is a very critical messaging that you send out every week.
yeah, I think, Mary Jane, that's a clear COVID related expense.
Correct, and I had conversations with the fire department regarding even some of their other lines that we might be able to identify for this current year and for the upcoming year that are directly COVID related. We specifically concentrated on salaries because that we knew we could come to you and make those adjustments. So some of these other items we'll definitely want to look at as we're putting the budget together, and I believe the fire department will be prepared to have those answers for us.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely. And then maintenance contracts, there's a marginal increase there just due to maintenance costs and equipment maintenance. Again, same thing. This budget covers every town agency in town, including obviously public safety. There's a big increase in internet use, obviously, due to COVID and everyday operations. So that also offsets some of the telephone costs. Outside of that, that's all I have. I'm short and sweet.
Chief, I don't understand that. When you say there's a big increase, obviously, for using the phones and internet. Does that mean more people are using more devices? We bought more licenses? I mean, what about using a service more
Well,
than
again,
previously?
we're not talking a large increase in that
Well, I
area.
mean, but regardless, what's the explanation?
The explanation is that combination of both. More users and more licenses, but basically more users. We've been more use. I shouldn't say users, but more use.
I'm just unfamiliar with why using an internet service would cost more if you used it 2 hours one day and 7 hours the next day. Why that would change the usage and why that would change the cost.
It's the amount of bandwidth that we're using.
So we bought more capacity.
Right, more capacity.
And how much was that change and when did that happen?
Device use too. It's a lot of a lot of little things that accumulate into a big thing. We're only talking like a $5,000 increase in that particular line item.
Well, I know, you're right. The entire bump, it's not, these aren't giant numbers, but it's a
Right.
5%, it's a
You know,
5% bump overall.
It's, you know, how many additional modems did we add? How many?
I don't know.
You know, it's all that kind of stuff.
Hotspot services.
Hotspots,
for the
cradle
cell phones.
points, you know, it's like down at the vaccination clinic or the vaccination clinic, the test kits, all that stuff required bandwidth, additional bandwidth.
And perhaps the supports are in these documents somewhere, but if they're not, I'd be interested to see those details.
That's not a problem. You can remember, right, this budget went over about $15,000 last year.
Yeah, anything further on communications? No? Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right. Have we come to the end of today's?
We have.
We have. All right, well, listen, thank you to the board of finance members who have stuck it out with us. And we'll reconvene tomorrow at 8:30, not 9:30. And some of us will try to sort out our technical challenge between now and then. I may actually bring a laptop in. It might be a
It's
little
much easier.
Much easier.
The iPad, I gave up my iPad
Got it.
right away.
All right, thank you all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.